working with energy in different ways, apparently happens, but nobody does it. There isn't anyone. Going to war with Iraq apparently happens, nobody does it.
Okay, and I mean, very interesting also for me at least is sexuality, because I only can imagine if there are no boundaries, must be something.
Oh, I tell you. So what do you do for dinner tonight? It's just that in a sense everything goes on as it did before, but there's no longer anybody in there that's measuring it or is afraid of it or is calculating it or is trying to do it right or you know. There's nothing in there now, there's just boundless sex. Whee! There's a total freedom about it.
And what I'm conditioned like is that sexuality is very much limited by moral.
Yeah.
And well, I've got always the idea if there is no moral, then, for example, extramarital thing would happen every now and then, because there is someone, and for me, it's still the person who wants to get something, and if it is sex, then still this person gets something. If there are no boundaries, is there some idea of okay, this guy's nice looking and he's small, and so I have sex, or I mean, how does it happen then?
Well, it happens the way as it always has happened. Whatever moral boundaries you put on your sexuality, when he walks through the door, they just fly out the window. Usually. So, in a way, you could say that works both ways. But what I have to say is that when you've got a moral boundary that you stick to, you're more liable to break it than somebody who isn't there anymore and has lost all sense of morals. Because there's no longer something to fight against, there just is a freedom. And I can't say to you that in a state of liberation there's any sort of guidelines as far as making love is concerned. There are no longer any, there's nothing that controls, there's no longer any moral sense of anything. There is only what happens.
That sounds great, if both with partners.
No, but hold on, that's right. But if somebody is, I mean, there is nobody that's liberated, but for the sake of simplicity, if there is somebody that's liberated that's living with somebody who isn't, that's difficult. Somebody who isn't. But I just want to be clear about this. For somebody who's liberated, it doesn't mean that sleeping around would happen at all. There are no rules. You can't. This crap that you hear about, oh well, we're all free and it's all just love, and you can go up and say that's just nonsense, because something else comes in, or something else drops away that doesn't necessarily provoke any sort of need to prove anything anymore. That just isn't there anymore.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because when I think of it, it's still this I, and this I still wants something, needs something. So I just thought, well, in liberation, but then is there any desire still? Because desire for me is always connected with this person who wants something.
Yes, sure. So obviously sexuality still happens after liberation. Otherwise I wouldn't be here otherwise. No, but obviously it happens after, because it is life happening. But there's no longer any sense, that there's no longer that drive to prove oneself in it, because there's no longer anyone there. And the other thing about liberation is that there's no longer any need in that sense, because everything, you could say that liberation is total sexuality, because everything is in love with everything. So that whole energy that brings about what you would call sexually immoral action there's just not really there to drive that on. It's all right, it's no good something that's much easier. It's totally different. But also, I have to say the relation, the being together is no longer anything like being together prior to liberation. Because in a sort of sense, and I hope you'll understand what I'm saying, in a sort of sense, when two liberated people, or there is no such thing, live together, then it's like a sort of aloneness. And there's a sort of living, but apparently with somebody else who's living. It's like two alonenesses, or onenesses living in the same house. It's totally free. Does that get anywhere near it?
Well, I think I can't think about it.
No.
So therefore it isn't clear, and still it is.
Yeah. Liberation is actually the marriage of the female and male. You know, in this manifestation, there is apparently female and male energy. Apparently, it's an appearance. So the male energy tends to be impersonal, and the female energy tends to be devotional. Or you could say there is a sort of distance or impersonality about male energy, and it doesn't necessarily happen only for men. There is no such thing as a man or a woman energy. And in the female energy, there is a devotional but a very alive energy. It's fire, and this is ice. And the two apparently appear in the manifestation and are attracted and repelled by each other. There's a total attraction to both energies, from this energy to the other one. And there's an absolute fear of this energy as well. Because somewhere deep in the psyche is an absolute knowing that when the two come together totally, they will extinguish each other. And that is what liberation is. Liberation is the apparent splitting into the dream of there being duality, female and male energy. It's a dream. Liberation is the bringing, coming together those two, and they extinguish each other, and there is no longer gender. And so that's why the whole drive of sleeping with somebody else simply doesn't arise anymore, because there's no longer that energy in the dream.
What was it about the point of liberation that made it the apparent when Parsons realised that it wasn't another trick of the mind as a secret?
Oh no, there's no way of saying that, except that it's indescribable, and it can't be described by the mind. So if it was a trick of the mind, it would be, my own sense is that the mind would be able to describe it in some way. It's indescribable. When it happens, it's like being hit by a bus. You know, it's much more than a trick. and well, as far as this is concerned, everything that arises in the mind is transient, passing by. And there's only one constant, which is beingness. Oh, the other thing I just want to say about this thing about male and female is that it has nothing to do with people having to be together. In every apparent being, there is both male and female energy. And it's just that in the dream they seem to be apart, and in liberation they extinguish each other and are one.
So sexuality is also a kind of invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why in making love sometimes there can be a sense of losing yourself totally, and even losing a sense of gender. That's a sort of glimpse of in that sort of very passionate, highly alive happening. Then you can lose it. You can be lost. Yeah, and in a sense, there's no longer any sense of a man or a woman. But I think that's why there's an attraction to the idea of tantric methods. They never work because you're trying to get somewhere. But there is a sort of connection.
Also sexuality.
Yeah.
As I said,
Yeah.
that would work.
Yeah.
The moment I become aware of the mother, and therefore the I, separation takes
Yes.
place, and then
still